FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Today is 5/17/17, whatever that means. Trump under siege, end of America. What else can go right? Andrew Hoffman is with us now to opine. Hey, before we start, any emails, email us, questions, comments, whatever, at kl@kerrylutz.com. Good morning, Andy.
Good morning. Just to qualify, everyone who knows me well knows I've had bronchitis or pneumonia or whatever you want to call it for the past 2 weeks. And so I'll try to get through this very slowly but surely. But, per my article this morning, which was called Made in America, the Perfect Precious Metal Storm, as far as I'm concerned, America as we know it, as we have known it our whole lives, officially ended last night. Because now that, in my view, whether you think he's going to be impeached or not, which I do, I think his presidency has been commandeered already by the, as we call it, the deep state, and it's at the point where the draconian changes to America that we've seen, in slow motion over the past 15 years or so are about to get a lot worse. And it's coming at a time where financial markets have been, as I put it last week, boosted by the PPT to .com valuations during a Great Depression era. And conversely, precious metals have been held down to inflation-adjusted all-time lows at a time when the mining industry is falling apart and demand is surging and currencies and commodities are falling apart. And then, of course, you have the rise of cryptocurrency, which is going to work together with precious metals as the twin destroyer of this fiat regime and, this deep state, whatever you want to call it. The people with the most to lose, the 0.1%, are going to fight to the death. And it's going to be the death of financially, at least, of billions. And so the time to protect yourself is now, because we're done. We're done with Trumpflation. We're done with the hype and hope. We're probably done with the Fed rate hike cycle and all that stuff. It's time to get serious about protecting yourself, because this is to me, starting yesterday, the end of America as we have always known it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to wonder what the heck is really going on. These media whores out there are just, they seem to be in another plane of existence here. And it's definitely interesting to watch them as they really push an agenda that's the deep state's agenda. And you realize that there's no difference between the news media and all the other powers that be. I mean, it's a perfect display right now is what I mean to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw it really from the second that it was clear that Trump had a chance of winning. When he just kind of swept through the Republican candidates like Jeb Bush, like they weren't even there. They put in every ounce of their efforts, from the Billy Bush tape and the Veritas, all the stuff with rigging the elections and the propaganda, everything they could to make him lose. The thing is, the will of the people is strong. And so they were taken by surprise when he actually did win on the heels of the Brexit last year. And so basically, since that time, they not only have taken their level of market rigging of everything, stocks, bonds, currencies, commodities, and of course, precious metals, to try to pretend everything's okay while they plotted their next stage of domination. They've now, clearly taken, the agenda a step further, starting with the New York Times article this week about how Trump was giving away secrets to the Russians, to this. I mean, look, Trump hasn't helped himself out any with the way he acts and, the policies that he undertakes and the brusqueness. But the fact is, he never had a chance. And I noted that in my podcast, Trump turning on Trump 2 days after the election. I said he'd never be able to get anything done. But even I am in awe of the efforts post-election to destroy him. And it's not just tearing America apart, but more importantly, as I was writing this morning, really a must-read article, the precious metal storm made in America. America's taken itself down from within. and the drop in the dollar, and the dollar's reserve currency status is going to be dramatic because of the drop in America's status around the world. And as people realize, politically, it's a basket case. Just like economically, it has more debt than anyone on the planet. Its economy is falling apart. It's the social unrest is only going to get worse. And and when you have not only precious metals, which have been held down for so long, but are now breaking out. Look, gold just surged above its 200-week moving average again this morning. It's $20 above it. Silver will get back there soon. Remember, gold's 5.5-year downtrend line going all the way back to the point of no return attacks of September of 2011. That's only about $30 from here. So, we're going to see a full-blown precious metal bull market like we haven't seen, in a decade. Not that we already haven't had one in the other currencies of the world. And at the same time, you have the explosion of cryptocurrency. So you have, you have a monetary revolution that's been ongoing and kind of accelerating for years. And now that you're going to see destabilization of the supposedly superpower world's reserve currency issuer, I think you're going to see a real acceleration of that trend, especially because the global economy is dead in the water. Led by the United States, and the ding dong, the Fed is dead moment is coming. I mean, just look at what's going on this morning. The 10-year rate is down to 225 again, and now markets are falling, and there's chaos. Does anyone really believe the Fed's going to raise rates in June? Does anyone? It's just like Trumpflation died. Trumpflation died months ago, but Trumpflation really died today. So did probably the Fed's rate hiking cycle. And which was all bogus, all based on their ability to manipulate the stock market higher so they can get away with it. And they didn't even get to 1%. Greenspan never got below 1% during the aftermath of the 2000 crisis. And that's when we had a third of the debt that we have now. So I think a lot of things are going to be changing, starting with the expectations of what the Fed is going to do. And if you're just looking at what I do for a living, talking about precious metals and why you need to own them, this is the time to own them. But it's far bigger than that, because America's role in the world is dramatically weakening. And as I put it today, the impeachment process, or whether they get it done or not, which I believe they will, is going to make Andrew Johnson and Richard Nixon and Clinton, all that stuff combined, look tame, because America is tearing itself apart socially and politically.
Yeah, that it is. Never seen anything like this in our lives. Even in the 60s, it wasn't to this extreme, and it's being fed, and it's deliberate. It's a deliberate action by the deep state and the powers that be to get rid of America, and then they can have their way with the world.
And when we talk about deep state, because everyone knows from my perspective, I'm not a conspiracy theorist per se. I don't have a belief that there's a handful of people trying to control the world. What I've always said is that there are small groups of people in this increasingly tiered world who have a lot of power, and they often have similar goals. Like, the people who run the European Union and the ECB have similar goals as the Fed and the people who run America. They want paper currency to remain strong, and they don't want chaos that will prevent them from staying in power. And the same goes for Japan and even China. They all have those kind of similar goals. And of course, then they're tied at the hip by Wall Street and all the lobbyists, like in the Defense Department and the healthcare industry, that all are tied to the current status quo staying in power. So that's what I mean by the deep state. And they are protecting their interests, just like the creatures at Jekyll Island did back 100 years ago. And only this time around, there's 7.5 billion people in the world, and they've already run the world to the brink of financial and monetary ruin. So I think there's going to be some of the most dangerous and destabilizing times any of us have ever known coming ahead. And it's all the root of this evil is the money. Or the currency, which is being destroyed. And I think now that we finally have, as I call it, the most overdue financial crisis in history, you're going to see not just the monetary loss of confidence, but the monetary revolution that's going to be decentralized cryptocurrency. And it's going to cause, billions of people to be uprooted and have all kinds of financial and social issues. And, this is why you need to protect yourself now in many ways, not just financially, but, the simplest possible way, if you're talking about financially, which is what I focus on, is to just get yourself some physical gold and silver. Give a call to Miles Franklin. We've been in business now 20 28 years without a single registered complaint. Email me at ahoffman@milesfranklin.com. Give us a call at 800-822-8080. We also have free online purchasing. We have unique storage programs in Canada, a private safety deposit box program that no one else has. Just give us a call, 800-822-8080. We don't have to do anything, but certainly, ask us questions. We've been doing this for a long, long time.
Yeah, and now is the time. If you've waited this long, you've been warned many times. You never know how it's going to unwind, but you know that it's going to unwind, and that's what I think we're seeing now, potentially.
Yeah, potentially. It was only a matter of when. And, and again, I can't emphasize enough, it's not Trump personally. Trump is just symbolic. His rise is just symbolic of what's wrong with the country, that people are voting for outsiders because they're so dispirited with what's going on. But it didn't matter. I said today, he could have done a 180-degree turn in hindsight on every single thing he's done, and it wouldn't matter. He's an outsider, and they wanted him, figuratively, as I said, they wanted him dead, and they are going to drive him out one way or the other, and try to drive in their agenda, which fortunately there are ways to fight against. To me, the biggest way to fight against it is monetarily. I mean, from a personal standpoint, just by owning some physical gold and silver. But to me, the bigger picture is going to be the rise of cryptocurrency, because that's going to be, as I've said forever, governments will never again be trusted to issue money after this. And now that the technology exists to have decentralized currencies outside of the purview of government, they could fight it all they want. But that's going to be a sea change in the world, kind of like Star Trek. How they have advanced societies, because that's how much I think people despise what the governments have done and with money, and how they're rapidly starting to understand that, and how they're going to have an option to opt out. And all along, the one thing that's not going to change is going to be gold and silver, as I call it, the once and future kings of wealth storage.
Yeah. Yep. I think you're correct. Bitcoin, I think it's a little early for the verdict, but my own personal belief is it's going to happen, and it's going to be a major form of currency that you'll use for many transactions. I think we'll see a lot of barter too, a lot of back to barter.
Yeah, well, barter is, that's primeval. I mean, yes, there'll be barter and of some things, but the fact is, and I'm not even talking about Bitcoin specifically, although it's hard to imagine that it's going to lose. And it's not just one. It's not like it has to be one. There are thousands of them. And just like there are thousands of .coms, it's not like only one survived. There's going to be multiple use cases for decentralized types of cryptocurrencies. But the point is that people are finally going to realize after this, as I've called it forever, history's largest, most destructive fiat Ponzi scheme implodes, that it's, that after all these centuries in which the biggest destroyer of humanity, I mean, outside of maybe religious crusades, has been fiat currency. And now that we can get around it, that there's going to be a way to avoid the governments destroying our lives with printed money, they're going to do it. And I think the adoption is going to be a lot faster than people can imagine once this calamity, really accelerates. And the beauty of it all is that gold and silver really have nothing to do with it. Gold and silver, yes, I know the Russian and Chinese, who are probably the two largest holders in the world, if you really saw what people actually had, yeah, they'll do some trade settlement. But the big picture is gold and silver, just like 5,000 years ago in Egypt, are going to be 5,000 years from now valuable as stores of value. And from an investment standpoint, the fact that they've been suppressed to historically low levels at a point where production is now plunging and demand is exploding. I mean, it's not just protection. Now it's the investment opportunity of a lifetime on top of that. So, again, people, this whole, Trump thing now is, to me, symboling a top of the, it's not the top of the American empire. That happened a while ago, but it's let's call it a significant interim top after, the past 10 years of trying to mask the decay and collapse from the 2008 crisis when said fiat currency scheme broke with manipulation of markets. Now's the time where you're going to start to see the crisis come in, and it's not just going to be in the financial markets.
Yeah. So is just going to unravel quickly, or is it going to be a gradual deterioration like we've been seeing?
Well, there's nothing gradual about what's going on. If you look at the last 10 years, what's happened in the world financially. I mean, look, the average currency in the world has lost half its purchasing power since the financial crisis. Half. Some a lot more. And I believe that there's just no way of knowing how fast it unravels in different places. But I think considering that America has, we're talking about all-time high stock prices, stock valuations in a Great Depression era when we're about to have all-out chaos politically and economically. So, can it unravel here in the superpower of the world very quickly? You bet it could. I just don't know. And really, it doesn't matter because, if I hold my gold, my silver, and some Bitcoin, I'll wait. But I have a feeling that things are going to go a lot faster now than they did, around the time of the financial crisis 10 years ago.
Yeah, well, that old saying pops into my mind. Things take much longer to happen than you ever thought possible, but they happen much faster than you ever believed could be once they do. That's
exactly what happened with the dot-com crash and the 2008 crisis, except this time around, we will not have central banks to bail us out. And that's the other thing that's going to change is, not only are people not going to trust the currencies anymore, but they're going to not trust the central banks. No, it's not that they can do anything. I mean, the Fed already had, the Bank of Japan and the ECB all have $4.5 trillion balance sheets. That's just the on-balance sheet part. They've blown their wad, as they say. There's nothing left that they can do except hyperinflate. And of course they'll do that. But the fact is, these people will be on pitchforks at some point. They will be discredited as much as any institution in the history, in financial history, starting with the Federal Reserve.
You think that the sheeple are going to realize that the Federal Reserve was really the cause of it and bad money?
The sheeple are going to realize that their money is being destroyed and that the inflation is killing them and the investment. So that's what they're going to worry about. But the investment community is where you're going to see them completely, stop giving any credence to the Federal Reserve. In fact, they're going to start to do the opposite of what the Fed says and does. For the average person, they don't even have money to invest, but they certainly are going to understand that the money is the problem. And that's why they are going to look to things like precious metals and cryptocurrency to escape the system.
Well, interesting world ahead of us. Hopefully it won't be as bad as you're anticipating, but who knows? Once it starts happening, all bets are off.
Prepare for the worst and hope for the best. But I got to tell you, I'm as optimistic a person in general as you're going to find. I've never been less optimistic about what's coming, and I've never, been more prepared for such. I've spent years worrying about it, but I'm more worried about it than ever. And I hope that the people listening to this show are worrying too, because if you don't do something about it, it's a very good chance you're going to be swept up in the 99%.
Yeah, and that's not a pleasant prognosis for the 99%.
No,
definitely not. So, well, hey, anything happy to say here, Andy?
Happy? I'm happy about, that I'm on the mend. And look, I'm happy that I've spent all this time helping to educate people, as you have, about what's going on. Look, the world's still going to go on. It's not going to be like a tsunami destroying the world, but it's going to be political and financial strife and economic crisis. And, if you prepared yourself for them, you're going to certainly minimize you're certainly going to survive and you perhaps will thrive. I mean, those are happy thoughts. Protect yourself and your family. And I guess you can't ask for much more.
I think you're right on that. Well, we'll leave it at that, Andy. Find Andy's work over at milesfranklin.com. Subscribe to his daily newsletter and frequent audio blogs. Send us an email if interested at kl@kerrylutz.com. Andy, we will catch you next week. Feel better.
Yes, thank you very much.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.